Assalamu alaikum. I'm Aksa Tariq, the editor-in-chief for the CXO Media Brands in Pakistan. And on behalf of the organizing team, the editorial and the conferences team, I'd like to welcome all of you to another session of CyberSectober 2023. As we return this year and bring together, IT and IS leaders, we're excited to have two people who are representing the digital banking or the newer side of banking, which is a landscape that has fairly evolved in the last 4 or 5 years. Now we've seen a lot of work or in progress when it comes to regulation, when it comes to compliance, when it comes to information security. So as the landscape of information security has evolved, we've also seen this industry really pick up steam. We have with us today Ammar Shareef from Keenu and Umair Aziz from Mashreq Bank. They're both heading the information security departments. And Keenu, as we know, is one of the longest standing fintechs in Pakistan today. So it's exciting to have them, talk about their journey. They started 10 years ago, and I'm sure it's been a journey and a half. We'd love to hear from Ammar about how he's, helped in that capacity. And Mashreq Pakistan, who's recently, earned their license. That's a different perspective that we'd like to hear as well. So we're going to dig deep into information security landscape for digital banks today. But Ammar Saab and Umair Saab, welcome and thank you for taking out time. We'd like to start off with a brief introduction about yourselves and your career journey and what it looks like to head the IS department today. So Ammar Saab, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Aksa, for having me. I am Ammar Shareef, and I've been associated with Keenu from the last 8 years. Initially, I joined the infrastructure side. As you know, as the company starts off, the infrastructure is pretty much required there. Um, Going like spent around 5.5, 6 years in the infrastructure side of things. I was looking after the security side as well, but from the implementation point of view. So after that, I got the chance and opportunity to head the infosec side of Keenu, and for me it was like a shift of seats. Previously I used to correct the things, now I have to enforce the things, so the infrastructure team can now work on the implementation side of things. So as far as Keenu is concerned, Keenu is been around in the fintech side of Pakistan, especially from the last 10 years. And Alhamdulillah, we are growing stronger and stronger. And from the security side, as we have seen, there has been a lot of shift of starting off from the ransomwares and phishings and everything that comes along with that. Now we have the supply chain side of issues that are emerging. So it's been a very roller coaster ride in Kino.
Thank you. Umair Saab, over to you.
Thank you, Aksa, for having me on this webinar. So, just to introduce myself, I have been with Mashreq for the last 4 months. As you would know, that Mashreq is relatively new in the market, but it has been in Pakistan for the greater part of last 30-40 years. They have got a rep office in Karachi, which was already there. But when it comes to proper banking or with the proper banking license, now they, after the emergence of digital bank regulations back in 2021, 2022, they applied for that, and this January, early January, they got the NOC to start their building the team and start building the infrastructure around the digital bank. Now, recently in the month of September, late September end, we've got the IPA as well, which is your in principle approval, which is another stage for getting the commercial license from State Bank, after which we are now preparing ourselves, preparing everything around the pilot launch, which would happen next year, and then the commercial launch would happen afterwards. So that is a general progression around any license regime in Pakistan when it comes to State Bank. When it comes to my career overall, I started my career back in 2011. So it's been almost 12 to 13 years in this field. Been working with the fintech for the last 4 to 5 years. Before that, I was in the Middle East for 6 years. And before that, when I started my career, I was in Pakistan working for a couple of different companies in services sector. So that's a brief around my career and Mashreq in Pakistan.
course, considering this is a fairly new sort of space, even in Pakistan, right? And I always think that the fintech sector is sort of evolving on the go. So you go with suggestions, and the regulator sort of makes changes according to the input that we've given in. How do you, at this point in time, are prioritizing or gathering that threat intelligence? Because this is something that's even customer awareness at this point in time is happening on the go. Once a bad incident happens, and we have a very sort of reactive approach here in Pakistan on cybersecurity, and this applies, I think, across whatever industry, but I think financial more than any other. So what are you doing at this point to prioritize and gather that threat intelligence to stay ahead of evolving cyber threats as well?
So basically, the first thing that we've been working on very aggressively is the like the inventory side of things, because if you don't know your assets, you cannot protect them. So that is one area that we continuously reiterate, because being a fintech, we have very fast pace of changing things. The office are changing, the people are coming in and going out. In inventorying those assets that are connected to the network, then the change that is happening, because it happens fairly quickly here, and to keep up the threats, to have a balance between the change and the threats that are being evolving from day to day. So keeping that balance, we are working on the uh, uh, intel that we are getting from different areas. That is again a priority here. Then the awareness part is very critical right now, because the challenge, at least I see, that we as a company face, and I've seen the industry is facing as well, is the awareness of how threats are being like modified, morphed, and like different techniques are being attacked by the threat actors. So that area is there. Then secondly, the supply chain factor that I initially mentioned is very critical for us, at least now, because as we are everybody is on cloud, like our communication is on cloud. So that area of unknown, because you are just, in some cases you just have a username and password of a certain application, so what happens behind that you don't know. So to have a complete inventory of that, then have a categorization of the data that you are giving to the cloud, and what we are receiving from the cloud itself. So doing some sort of impact analysis of those things, that is there. Then again, to be connected with the industry, because that is again a critical aspect. We learn from our seniors, as well as the different companies that are unfortunately that have been affected because of cyber attacks. So that is again one of the area that we kind of look up to. For example, we have Okta's incident that has been recently happened, so learning from those incidents as well. And again, to reiterate, especially the privileged users, to be careful about how they are handling the infrastructure side of things, and how the application is being delivered to production. Those areas, like, we are very aggressively looking at.
So I'll just break down your question into two parts. So you asked about the threat intelligence. So see, there are two parts to it. One is that you have to make sure that your customers are aware of the recent threats, and they are aware of different social engineering attacks. And secondly, internally within your infrastructure, within your own landscape, you have to make sure that your employees, your third parties, your suppliers are also adhering to your policies and procedures. When it comes to customers, it has now become more of a national issue. Now if you call anyone nowadays, you would hear a message saying that don't share your pain, don't share your message. So that has been initiated by PTA through telcos to educate their users. Before that, it was mainly banks sending SMSs to their customers, informing them about such attempts being happening. Similarly, there has been different incidents where such issues led to frauds and financial loss for the customer. So this has now become a regulatory and more of a national issue nowadays, with a lot of people falling for this scam and sharing their proprietary or sensitive information. So this is one way where banks are collaborating among themselves. So there's a forum of PBA. PBA has Pakistan Banking Association. They have their own security committee, which last year also had a TV advertisement on these scams as well. Then State Bank is also pretty much very active on issuing circulars and regulations to the banks for their compliance on customer awareness. So that is one part. When it comes to your internal assets and internal employees, you also have to keep on doing these phishing simulations, making sure that your employees are aware of different cybersecurity threats, because at the end of the day, now the modern world and the modern technologies have become so sophisticated that the first entry point remains through a mistake of a person. The weakest link in any organization or any institution remains a human being, and that is very difficult to protect because you can't put a technical control against it. So the only thing that you can do is to make sure that they are aware of different threats, and they are you build a culture around these things, and you make sure that they get regularly updated with the recent threats. So in any institution, generally in especially financial institutions, there are monthly emails that are being sent from information security teams. There are awareness trainings that are being conducted for new employees, and then yearly trainings. And then obviously these are phishing simulations that you can always do to check the readiness of your employees against such attempts.
So, because you talked about also providing or looking at the customer side in digital banking, particularly, or in the space that both of you work in, there is a need to constantly provide a seamless and user-friendly, digital banking or experience to your customers. And that could often mean that, there is no room for gatekeeping. And when you're talking about, these the security protocols, sometimes they look at they're looked at as hindrances or hindrances towards better or the best sort of UI and UX. So what are these unique sort of cybersecurity challenges that digital banks, fintechs, or companies like yours are facing that traditional banks don't really will be focusing on at the moment?
Very interesting point. Actually, the problem that we at least face is the the change that comes to for our review, and then as you have said that we kind of become a face of the people who are stopping the change for digital side of product team as well as the marketing team. But what we have done, as Umair has said previously as well, the awareness part has really helped out, because when you interact with these different departments, they kind of have the gravity, as well as the regulator now, State Bank, is very aggressive in terms of the cybersecurity. And I would say they are kind of the forefront, as far as I know, in terms of the regulations that they have adopted and given out. For example, the cloud adoption framework they have given, then they have even given out the mobile security guidelines. So they have really helped at least us to enforce our, or at least not enforce, but help the product side, that how to build those controls from the ideation phase. So once they are kind of designing the workflows, how the onboarding should be happening, so we are now automatically invited that, like, we need your input how to make it secure from the get go. So the regulations have really helped out. And then of course the awareness is again like the interaction with the teams, as well as the emails, as Umair said, that we also have been sending out to our users. So, and we get a lot of questions from even from the internal teams as well, like this has happened, how I should respond to it. My brother or maybe my sister has done so and so thing, so how can I can recover. So from the awareness side, I've at least I've seen the neo generation, or the Gen Z, as I would call them, they are very particular about the cybersecurity side of things. So it's really helpful in terms of to securing the digital landscape.
Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree with Amar Saab here. And more on the conventional versus digital debate. See, from a viewer's perspective, just to explain it in a better way, as a digital bank, we want meet our customers physically, right? So, so the conventional bank has always this control that they can call the customer and ask them to come to the branch and do
Yeah.
their verification, give their documents, get their physical signatures on the paper, and make sure that the customer is who he is. But when it comes to digital onboarding and digital journeys, we don't have that mechanism. So we have to build all of our customer journeys around the digital landscape. How we can collect that information, how we can make sure that they can be verified of who they are, their source of income, their CNIC copies, their other sources, other proof documents. So when we have got these regulations on merchant onboarding, digital onboarding from State Bank, it has helped security or compliance or other teams case with respect to business and marketing teams, as Amarsa was mentioning, that now our input is as important as any other input in on a table. And generally the best security model is the one where you enforce or where you make security by design, where you implement all the design decisions uh, at the early stage, because the cost of implementation of security controls afterwards gets very exponentially high. So you have to ensure that your security teams and your security controls and all those small controls that you want to enable on different UI UX journeys are embedded at the very early stage. So security by design is what is the way forward now.
So based on both your answers, are there any past incidents, internally or externally, that you've learned from, and how have these influenced your incident response strategies at this point in time? Because of course, this is also, as I said earlier, it could be sort of a work in progress, looking at industry trends locally as well as globally, and what's coming from the regulator itself.
Yes, actually, like what we have done in our awareness session as well, like we create stories for our employees. So what happened is, like, from our internal users, we get a lot of queries on the incidents. For example, if they have read about the Okta, or if they have read anything about, like local banks. One of the incident is very famous among the local industry. So we use those as use cases, and then kind of give information like what you have to do, because in general we cannot give all the information to a single user. Everybody has their own certain jobs, or maybe their own small effort that they have to put in, and that collectively becomes a complete chain of security. So as you have mentioned, like nobody can say that they are 100% secure. What we can do is we can improve the awareness, and then build controls around them. And in case if any incident happens, for example, you have certain fire incident that had happened, like in our cases, one of our cloud service provider had an issue. So the incident response mechanism is important, because your readiness for anything unknown is very important. So for us, like, we have collaborated with our internal risk team as well as the compliance team, and they have we've designed the area of incident response to be sort of a practice, rather than just giving a theory based information on it. There are certain simulations that you can use cases that you can perform. For example, you can have an ad hoc dr activity you have to conduct without any intimation. So that really helps, like, what you have to do. Then again, as Umair said about the phishing simulations, they are again very important. We kind of do some sort of gamification during the awareness session as well, like how effective the information has been absorbed by the user. So that gives us the instant feedback, the actual feedback of how much knowledge or information the user has grasped. Then we can schedule the awareness reiterate some of the points that have been missed or maybe misunderstood by the users. So these are some of the areas that I feel that can really improve uh, the uh,
Thank you. Umair, so is there
Yeah.
something you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I just would like to add a couple of points around the feedback loop, which is very much required across the organization. You talked about having to learn from incidents internally or externally in your journeys or on your digital onboarding or other journeys. So I think the most successful organizations, if you take the model of Revolut or Monzo and 26, which are one of the most famous digital banks around the world, uh, the best thing that they have done is that they have continued to evolve, and evolving comes from a feedback loop from their customers. So whenever you come up with a new journey or a new product or new change, it has to be uh, uh, the feedback has to be taken from the customers, how has it performed. And when it comes to security incidents, you have to quickly learn and change and adapt to different attempts that are being happening. So you go with uh, not having a captcha, and then you have to enforce the captcha as a small example on your sign up page, because there was a phishing attempt, there was some scamming that was happening. So you have to keep on evolving, because it's always a cat and mouse race between hackers and scammers and security professionals, and you have to make sure that you are not falling behind.
When we're also talking about digital banks, particularly, they rely significantly on APIs, and we have seen there are global examples as well where API security has been the cause of some of the biggest breaches internationally, right? So while you're ensuring that you're 100% on providing that access to APIs, how do you strike that balance again? What measures are in place to prevent unauthorized access and data breaches through API vulnerabilities? So it's like you're opening up a Pandora's box, but you have to then put in filters in order to secure yourself.
Yes, from the API perspective, I think one of the best way to move forward is uh, sort of make gates when you are, creating the API. So it's kind of embedded within your development phase. It's embedded within your, like once the patch is pushed to the production. So having those automated gates are very important. You cannot do like manual checks are important, but then to for especially from the digital side of things, you have to continuously make changes. So to make that change effective and be on time, because time is very important, especially in the digital space. If you don't market it at a pace, then you kind of is are left behind. So those gates at the implementation phase, then at testing phase, be it automated, is very important, and they really help out to scale your product.
Yeah, I think uh, now, as I mentioned earlier in my responses, that security by design or secure by design is the way forward. So now, when it comes to application security or API security, the old way of doing their security was just to conduct a vulnerability assessment or penetration testing while they were going live or while they were being published online. But the modern way or the newer way to protect such interfaces is that you have a DevSecOps model, you have your application security engineering team that continues to provide feedback or provide their suggestions or their recommendations around how to build these APIs by following secure development lifecycle or by having secure coding practices, follow the best practices of OWASP and other frameworks, and you continue to test them in a black box, in a gray box environments, and you have your third parties doing that testing as well from a annual or biannual basis. So it's more of a cycle that you have to continue following to make sure that not only your uh, coding errors are being highlighted, but also nowadays it's exploitation of business logic as well that happens. And then you have your perimeter controls around API gateways and those which make sure that you have a rate limiting and you have other controls. So a lot of technical stuff goes in protecting these assets, but it's more of a DevSecOps model and a secure development lifecycle that you have to follow to ensure they are secure.
And you also talked about this earlier, but I'd like you to maybe expand on, in the context of partnerships and third-party integrations, because this is big in this space, particularly that both of you work in. How do you, assess and ensure the security posture of external vendors also? Because that's something that's usually not in your control, but at the same time, you have to be able to allow them in.
Yes, the first thing that what we have implemented is to have a session with the counterparty as well. Your agreements with them needs to be reviewed by security team as well, because because in digital landscape, like all your collaborations are, most of them are digital. So it's important to embed those things within the agreement first at the agreement level. Then you have to do a detailed due diligence of all the third parties. Then what you can take advantage of are the platforms that are providing certain details about your vendors. So those come in handies as well. You can do get the feedback from the partner as well, like how they are managing their cybersecurity posture. And again, the VAPT side, like what is the cycle of testing at their end as well, because the supply chain attacks are very normal nowadays. And like you have done all the security controls built within your organization, but then the information that you are sharing with that third party gets compromised, and it becomes a problem for you as well. Like the State Bank has clearly said that all you cannot transfer your risk, so it's important to do a detailed due diligence and continuously monitor them as well.
I completely agree that the old term used to be third party risk management, but now it's nth party risk management, because even the risks have now transferred from a third party to their partners as well. So it's a whole cycle that you have to follow, and you have to ensure that there's a minimum baseline criteria for any organization to integrate with you, and you ensure that they follow that minimum baseline criteria around how their security posture should be. You collect all of those questions as part of your due diligence. You check whether they conduct their independent audits, they conduct their threat assessments. They have their own security team that does the bare minimum which is required from a regulatory perspective, and as well as from a best practices point of view. So you ensure all of these things, and it is not something that you do once and you forget about it. It is also to be followed and to be repeated based upon the criticality of the vendor on a periodic basis.
All right. So since we also talked about collaboration and information sharing, and because this is coming from the regulator and then also managed internally within the industry and the ecosystem, and at least banking and the financial sector we've seen has been one of the most it's always been on the forefront when it comes to implementing cybersecurity services also. What are some of the things that you still think are going to be relevant or going to continue, and we're going to take them forward into 2024 when it comes to this is a hard stop from the IS department?
I personally think the privacy side of regulation, that they need to come in as well. There was a bill that was at the draft level, is still there. The privacy and data security side needs to be addressed very aggressively. Then there are new emerging technology, not emerging, but they are there, like blockchain is there. So like similar to how the regulation around the cloud has come in, I think the regulation around the blockchain and internet of things, they needs to be incorporated as well. And the data side is very important, like how much data you are collecting. There needs to be some limits around that, because currently there is no limitation, there is no regulation. I think that's the area that we really need to look after.
I agree. I think so. The data protection is one of the core topics that has not been addressed adequately since few years, and there has been a national effort around getting a data protection bill incorporated, but it's still in the draft stage. So whenever a new government would come in, they would probably take it up, and it would probably be finalized. But it's still an open end area for us. Europe has implemented GDPR. Other markets have their own privacy laws, but Pakistan doesn't have anything on the data collector who is collecting the data and data processor who is processing the data on the behalf of our data collector. In Pakistan, you see everyone taking copies of CNIC, and there is no control around what to do with it. You can find them in the dustbin. You can find them around different spaces, and there is no control around it. And it's a more sensitive document that we have got as individuals or as citizens of this country. Similarly, I think few of the regulations which were issued in 2018 or 2019 around enterprise technology governance risk management framework is one of those examples. There has been effort from State Bank to issue its second version, because obviously new threats have emerged and they needs to be updated into the regulations. It is still in the draft stage. It is still up for industry remarks and industry comments from different financial institutions. So once that is done, the newer version of that would also come in, because it is considered as a bible for technology and information security teams for implementation of their controls, at least the bare minimum in the financial institutions. So these two, I feel, would probably come in the next 1 year.
And when in a lot of our conversations with CISOs from traditional banking institutions, we've seen that making a business case for cybersecurity still remains a challenge. We would assume and hope that that's not the case when it comes to your particular side of banking. But I'd love to get your input on making that as a business case, because as we talked about earlier also, it does look like sometimes you are the barrier between innovation and security, while really just doing your job, right? How has that been a challenge? Has that changed? Is it evolving? Are we looking at a better sort of view on cybersecurity from the top-down approach?
Yes, like as Umair has said, because the teams have now taking our input as very important. Like if they are designing, even brainstorming something, they would call me or my team in to give our input in terms of how securely we can do that. So like I have observed, the top management is now very serious about it, because again, the traditional banking had a lot of papers involved. Now it's the other side. Everything is digital. For us it's 100% digital, so that's very important in terms of the understanding of the management. And I get a feedback from my management, like how they would send me certain links, use cases, and would ask me to kind of present it to how it has happened, how we can proactively create a gates around that incident, or maybe if possible incident. So it's been very progressive in terms of uh, uh, they taking the input from infosec teams, and even like even uh, the regulators as well as the compliance team, they are very aggressive in terms of taking the input from IS especially.
Yeah. Uh, I think security is always considered as a cost center, and it will remain as, because it doesn't earn you the business. But what needs to be transformed, or what needs to be understood across different teams or different business line, is that it's providing a service that ensure that the business is protected from all risks and all threats. And generally, all those organizations where security gets a handsome budget, uh, it's not a guarantee that they would deliver the best security as well. So it has to be a balanced approach around how the security is benefiting the business and how the budgets needs to be allocated. And I think I have seen in multiple organizations that I have worked in that the best model is where you become an enabler for your business rather than a roadblock. If you become an enabler, you get you get to see a lot of responsive feedback from the business lines on getting the required budget, on getting different things approved. And if it's a valid use case that you have for asking for a new product or new resource or a new budget line, then as long as you have a valid use case, it gets approved if you have been able to ensure that the business understands the risk if it is not implemented.
So my next question was going to be on, how your organization is incorporating cybersecurity measures into the development and deployment of new technologies. But I think we've covered most of it. If there's anything else that you would like to add to this, I'll take a comment from each of you.
I think we've covered pretty much every side of it. Just to reiterate, I think it's a life cycle. It doesn't stop. Like I've done my review, I've done my VAPT exercise, I've done black box and all those exercises. It doesn't end there. A minor change can open up again the Pandora box. So it's important to do it in a cycle rather than doing it block wise. Quarterly exercise is not. So the cycle is important, and again, the push from the management and the concept of treating it as a cost center, and the thought process has been changing a lot. They kind of take input on how we can effectively build controls for the assets that are being exposed.
Yeah. And I think on top of what Ammar Sahab has said, I would just like to say that security cannot operate in a silo. It is a department on its own, but the work that we do or the work that we get done, it is mostly done in collaboration with all the teams. And with recent incidents and risk, it has become more evident that we have to remain very much close, and we need to also understand business. It is not something that security teams can remain in their socks and in their rooms and just do their stuff, but they also need to understand business, because the newer threats or newer incidents that have happened recently, they are more on the level where people have understood how the business operates, and then they have found gaps in it to exploit them. So security is not only to make sure that technical control are there, it is also to ensure those business gaps are identified from a security perspective, and especially from a fraud risk perspective. Now, fraud risk and information security are very closely tied when it comes to digital banking, which is a little bit difference which we have from a conventional banking. On In our case, most of the frauds that will happen or that have happened in the past have been because of uh, a, a gap that was there because of an information security oversight, or because the fraud risk team didn't adhere to that point. So a very close collaboration between different teams is very important to mitigate your key risks and make sure that your customers are protected.
So I think I'll just quickly summarize and then ask for a closing comment each. We talked about data encryption, we talked about API security, mobile app security. A lot of these guidelines are, of course, coming from the regulator itself, but the implementation and collaboration, I think, remains key across all sections that we sort of discussed today. One thing that I would also like to add in here is that collaboration. When we talk about collaboration, there is a lot of work being done in terms of the industry, especially as we said, the FSI industry has been one that's always been open to collaboration, sharing, and knowledge sharing, because of the same sort of people rotating in different organizations also. I think this brings us to the end of our session. If there's any closing comment from each one of from either of you, we'll take that now and wrap up for today.
I just want to add up, like, to reiterate, it's important to to see information security as part of your product, not to treat it as something, a hindrance. The mindset is changing and needs to change as well, and this has to push across the other industries as well. uh, I feel like the FSI industry is doing very very optimal job, but it needs to collaborate with the telcos as well, because there is a lot of dependency for digital side of things on telcos infrastructure as well. That collaboration will really gear up the cybersecurity posture.
Thank you. Umair,
Yeah, thank you, Aksa, and thank you to Ammar Sahab for this session. I think we had a very valuable insights around the security on the digital banking side, or especially on the FI side. I would also like to add on to what Ammar Sahib has said, that now we have seen in the recent past that even the governmental efforts to introduce information security in different regulations have also started to come in. We have got approval on the national cybersecurity policy quite recently, where we have got the certs coming up for each regulator, under each regulator. So there will be a cert for a financial institution where all the threat intelligence and all the incidents would be compiled with. Similarly for all of the regulators. So I think it's more of a collaborative effort across different industries, different regulators, and even the government needs to play a pivotal role in combining all these forces to ensure that we have got optimal security posture of our country, because at the end of the day, the modern warfare is not only on your borders, it is more on your digital borders, which are your customers and your application and your financial products.
Absolutely. And thank you. Thank you very much for sharing your insights today. In conclusion, as the digital banking and fintech landscape continues to evolve, cybersecurity remains paramount to ensure, the integrity, the confidentiality, and availability of financial services. This is a newer generation, a newer age that we're also serving. So we need to make sure that we're engaging in robust dialogue, with information security leaders. So thank you to both of you for taking out the time and sharing your input with us. We hope that by addressing these challenges head on and embracing innovative security measures, other newer players in the industry can also learn and continue to evolve, as this sector, continues to evolve. Not only does this fortify, operations for the fintech and digital banking landscape, but also lay the foundation of, trusted, resilient, and customer-centric financial ecosystem in this new era of business that we're all in. So thank you once again for being a part of CyberSectober 2023. We hope to stay connected with you, inshallah, in the future as well. Best of luck in your roles, and thanks once again.